Hey, Mr. Farmer here, and today we're talking about 20.3 long-run cost curves. As a little review, try and draw some of these from earlier in the chapter: marginal cost, average total cost, average variable cost, and average fixed cost, and really think about the marginal product, average product, and the whole law of diminishing returns and how it affects the cost curves. And this should hopefully be what the cost curves look like. The average fixed cost is going downward sloping. Marginal cost is like a big old check mark going down and then up. The law of diminishing returns being shown there. ATC and ABC, the minimum points are on the marginal cost curve. Just again, mathematically, that has to be the case. And just a reminder that the marginal product and the marginal cost, they're reciprocals, just like the average product and average variable cost. I should say units of variable input on there. Okay, so long run stuff. Here we go. A little reminder, in the long run, what can be changed? You can alter plant capacity, like you can build a larger or smaller factory. A big thing later, when we talk about market structures, is that firms can enter or leave the market, but we're really not going to focus on that right now. We're mostly focusing on how these long run changes, the changes to the fixed resources, can be altered, can be changed, increased, decreased. Whereas in the short run, these are all held constant, and that created the law of diminishing returns. It meant that you ran out of fixed resources, and so your variable resources couldn't do as much. So let's think about Smiley Inc. Okay, so in Smiley Inc. we had this factory, and the whole objective was to try and make as many little smiley faces as we could, and you could have 2, 3, 4, 8 people going at it at a time, just everybody trying to make stuff. But at some point, you're going to run out of space, and so when you get to 10 workers, for instance, all of a sudden that 11th worker, they're just not adding anything. Maybe it's diminishing returns, maybe it's even negative returns, but because the fixed resource, the area of the plant in this case, the square, you ran out of space. Well, that was a short run problem. Long run, you can add portions to your factory. You can also decrease it also. Okay. So if you add, well, now those same 10 or 11 workers, they can produce maybe twice as much. Maybe not, but definitely more is the case because they don't hit the law of diminishing returns quite the same. They have more fixed resources, and that's what we're talking about today. So again, the short run, we had these kinds of cost curves, like we showed beforehand. In the long run, it's going to look like a giant U. Okay, so take a second to put that in your notes. So we have the LRAC, long run average cost. Sometimes you do see LRATC for long run average total cost. Same thing, it's assumed to be the total cost if it's not defined. Usually you'll see LRAC. Now, why does it look this way? Well, let's think about this. Let's again think about that Smiley Inc. place. Okay, when there's only one plant, you hit the diminishing returns. But all of a sudden, if you have a second plant on here, well, you know what? Those workers, they can produce a little bit more stuff. So their marginal cost curve, maybe it goes down a little bit further down that way. Why? Because those same workers, if you have this one worker right here, if you produce this quantity, 1, 2, 3, whatever else, it used to cost a lot to produce that. It used to cost, I don't know, $10 to produce, but you know what? Now it costs $5. Why? Because this person that helps produce it right here, they're twice as fast. They haven't run out of fixed resources. Maybe they have more people going. Well, if the marginal cost has shifted over, that would only be because the variable and fixed costs and total costs have all shifted over, the averages at least. So again, we have the average variable cost, the minimum still on here. And then we have the average total cost. Okay, and average fixed cost is just going to, we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, usually we just draw the ATC and ABC. We're not going to worry about the average fixed costs unless we're given data on that. We're not going to worry about that just for simplicity's sake. So the idea is that as you got more fixed resources, large capacity, well, it made it easier to produce. And then this would keep going again and again and again. For let's kind of get a couple more curves on here. Let's go ahead and change up the color for just 1 second. Okay, so you know what? This was stage 2, so I'll put a little marginal cost of 2 on here, and 2, and 2. Let's get a third one going. Got a marginal cost 3, and then we got average total cost 3, and then marginal cost, or average variable cost 3. And so again, let's kind of focus on a couple points here. Let's get different colors so we can see. Maybe bright green would be good. So at first, our cost was right here. And then as we kept going, you know what? We got more fixed resources, more capacities. Now we're down here. So here's our first, here's our second, and you know what? Now we're down here. There's our third. And it can keep going and going and going. So since fixed resources can be altered in the long run, the entire plant capacity can be changed. We kind of see that being represented. So now what we're doing is we're simply adding in all these different short runs. Here's the starter, short run 1, short run 2, short run 3. We have our first building, our second building, but our third building. And so we see this. Now, we do tend to see that at some point. We kind of do get the law of diminishing returns. Even if we change fixed resources, at some point, we do start to go up. Generally speaking, that will happen. Is it guaranteed to happen? At some point, yes. Can you push that off? Sure. There's definitely strategies to do that, but at some point that will happen. So again, what changed? Well, maybe it was the plant size. You increased it by whatever amount. Maybe you increased the amount of machines you have, etc. It's all the fixed resources. So when to change? Well, it depends on how much you want to produce. If you're given a business and they want to produce 900 units, if you want to produce 900 units right here, and you're at SRATC1, SRATC, by the way, short run average total cost. Again, if you just put ATC, it's assumed to be short run. Okay. Well, so if you're at short run 1, well, then it's going to be really expensive to try and make 900 units. So at this point, you're going to want to shift down and have a second factory. Could you still produce 900 units at that height? Yeah, but it's going to be really expensive. So if you can, build a third section. Okay, so it always just kind of depends on what the goal of companies as far as should you or should you. Also, it's expensive to change fixed capital, so there's that part too. Okay, so we actually identified the 3 different stages, 3 different parts of the long run cost curve in this way. The first part is economies of scale. Okay, and so that's this first part where it is actually downward sloping. Second part is called constant returns of scale, and yes, CRS and EOS are the abbreviations. And then we have diseconomies of scale, which is as you increase your fixed resources, at some point the LRATC actually does go up. And again, that's called diseconomies of scale. Or again, you can guess a DOS for diseconomies of scale. And again, this typically just happens generally. So I mean, now we'll just draw a big old U, but again, there's ways to elongate different parts. Now, where would you want to be? The constant returns of scale. You can see it is the lowest. It's kind of like the productive efficient portion in the long run. So economies of scale. Why does this happen? Well, there's a handful of reasons. One is labor specialization. If you have a larger plant, you can more specialize your products. You can have more people producing part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. Okay, so you can just be faster at it, more productivity. Again, call a comparative advantage thing pops back up with specialization. Second is you can get managerial specialization. At first, I hope you're a Renaissance person because you are the CEO, CFO, CIO, CEO, fill in the alphabet O. You're trying to manufacture stuff, you're trying to market it, you're trying to engineer it, but if you have managers that can specialize, okay, you focus on this, you focus on that. Why? Because you're good at that. And so again, you can be more efficient as you go along. And again, if you're able to increase your fixed resources, you probably can increase your managerial staff as well. And not to mention, you get more efficient capital. You're probably not replacing your stuff with worse stuff. Maybe it's the exact same, but just an updated model or one that works better. Okay, but you're getting more efficient capital. It's better technology, better whatever it is. You're doing faster and faster. And last thing is, you are a business. Okay, you're not trying to make it anymore. So all those startup costs are gone. Those marketing is reduced. Okay, if you hear big company names, Apple, Nike, Google, you know who those are. They don't need to advertise anymore. That wasn't always the case. At the same time, there's some learning by doing. How should you produce these different things? You know how you should produce it. You've been successful enough to be able to increase your plant capacity. So all these help lead to economies of scale, which again is the downward portion of that cost curve. But what about the upward portion? Well, sometimes if a company gets too large, it's just difficult to control. Until Star Wars: The Empire there. Okay, at first you're efficient. At first you're coordinating, but at some point, man, there's a big time trying to turn that cog. It is huge. How do we get this done? What's going on? You have who knows how many extra managerial staff, and are they doubling up on what they should be doing? Is it clear where one person's job ends and another begins? Whereas before you're scrambling to get everything done, now you have enough staff where they might be twiddling their thumbs a little bit. Sometimes firms just become too big. It's making those decisions or increasing whatever else. You can still get a little bit out of it, but not compared to what you used to be able to. And it might be very expensive to get that little bit of production out of it. So there's no real specific reason why diseconomies of scale happens. It's just, it happens. So we have some examples of just general staff. And these are just characters. I don't know if these are realistic or not, but very typical hierarchies. We've got the stockholders, the actual owners of a corporation, a publicly traded stock at least. You got board directors, presidents. You got different staffs here. Okay, so I would imagine at some point, somewhere along this line, there might be maybe 2 managers. Okay, potential. I'm not saying it's for General Motors or anything, but this large of a company, who answers what? If this person down here wants an answer, do they go to this person, this person, this person, this? Even just communication, who do you talk to can be an issue. Whereas if you have a small company like this, well, you know, this person is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people away from the owner. They could be in the same building. They could shout across the room and get to the right answer. Okay, versus previous one where who knows how long that was. Okay. And then you can get different ideas as well. You know, with something like Amazon, it'd be like this. Google, where, you know, it's a little more fluid as far as where you go. Facebook, kind of King Arthur. It's your idea this week and it's your idea next week, and hey, let's all get along. And then some corporations that have different branches, Microsoft would be an example of that, although, again, I don't know if this is how it works, where they're fighting for the same money, same funding, and so maybe they don't get along super well. Okay. The last part of the long-run average total cost curve is the constant returns of scale, which is just this bottom part. Kind of whatever goes down goes back up, so there must be a bottom part of that. And again, this is where companies would like to be, because again, that has the lowest amount, so just hang out there. But again, it's hindsight's 2020. You might be at this unit 6. Hey, we're doing great. This is awesome. Let's keep going. And then you realize in hindsight, oh, we were actually at that sweet spot. Okay, let's actually go back a little bit. There's a thing called minimum efficiency scale, which is actually kind of a funny name. Some people do abbreviate as MES. The minimum efficiency scale is the minimum quantity, so the lowest quantity, to produce at the lowest LRATC, okay, which is the most efficient. So what is the lowest quantity that you can be the most efficient? Apparently it's unit 5. Okay, so it's the first quantity at which you are at the constant returns of scale. It's just an identifying point on there. We won't do much with it, but there you have that. So the sizes of firms at the minimum efficiency scale, just the constant returns of scale is fine. Various sizes could be found there. okay, because there's a larger portion of that. But sometimes we have more natural monopolies. Natural monopolies are going to come up again, and we're going to talk about economies of scale at that point. So what's the reality? Who can actually obtain the constant returns of scale? Well, probably the bigger companies, because again, they have the most money to do that. It costs money to get that capital. It costs money to run around and do all that kind of stuff. Okay. So what if only one firm can obtain the minimum efficiency scale? Well, naturally, they're going to have the lowest costs. Naturally, they can price at the lowest price. And naturally, they're going to push all their competitors out. Hence why we call them natural monopolies. But that's going to be for a later topic. But again, it does definitely connect with the economies of scale, so we want to talk about it here. Okay, that is it. Hopefully we did help clarify what the long-run average total cost curve is. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.